Thanks for pressing play. This episode of Legends and Losers is sponsored by GrowWire.com. GrowWire is the new place for entrepreneurs who want to grow personally and professionally, and it's the place for innovation. Check it out, GrowWire.com. Today we hang out with my friend, author, speaker, evangelist at Salesforce.com, none other than Tiffany Bova. We talk all about growth. We talk about what it's like to write a big-time book. Her new book, Growth IQ, is just coming out. We talk about what it's like to try to stand on the shoulders of giants, how to build a long-term successful career in the tech business, and why Tiffany Bova wants you to improve your growth IQ. All right. Joey Ramone said, "Hey ho, let's go." And Warren Buffett said, quote, "The investor of today does not profit from yesterday's growth." How do you like that? When was the last time you heard Joey Ramone and Warren Buffett quoted in the same paragraph? That's just what happens here on Legends and Losers. Thank you so much for joining us. If you're a longtime listener, thank you from the bottom of my heart. You are why we do this. And if you're brand new, well, this is a different kind of podcast. We do not have highly edited, prefabricated, highly produced interviews where we spoon feed talking points and other pablum to you. On Legends and Losers, we try to capture lightning in a bottle, conversations worth sharing, conversations that hopefully make a giant difference. And so the experience you have here on Legends and Losers is an eavesdropping one on two people sitting down having a coffee or a beer or maybe going for a walk and talking about stuff that matters. And that's exactly what we have today with the incredible Tiffany Bova. She is the global customer growth and innovation evangelist at Salesforce.com. And she's an author of this new book, Growth IQ, Get Smarter About the Choices That Will Make or Break Your Business. She's got a distinguished career. Prior to Salesforce, she was a big ding-dong analyst at Gartner. You can check out her amazing background at our show notes if you go to legendsandlosers.com and check out the show notes for this episode. And to find Tiffany, why not tweet her at Tiffany, Tiffani_Bova on Twitter, and tell her you heard her on Legends and Losers, and maybe tell her what you liked about what she said on Legends and Losers. She's been on virtually every media outlet you could imagine. She's also the host of an awesome podcast. So here she is on Legends and Losers, Tiffany Bova.
And I think it's so serendipitous that you and I met and that your book was with Heather. And Heather was really early in giving me a break in my career in like 2000. Like just really, I mean, she's so instrumental in a lot that I was able to do early in my career. She's one of my favorite people in the business. And I actually went to her early and said, I need an editor, and you kind of know me, know my voice. And then she told me no and didn't tell me why. Now I know why. Whatever.
So are you saying that I got to her before you did?
Or you're just better looking. Let's just go with that.
Well, I think if in a poll of 10 out of 10 or 10 people, 10 out of 10 of them would say you're better looking.
It's just my hair. That's all.
It's like, remember those old ads for, I think it was Trident gum, where they were sort of trying to promote it as good for your teeth. And they're sort of saying something to the effect of, 4 out of 5 dentists say yes.
Yes.
I always want to know who that one dentist is.
Who's like, yeah, not so much. Your teeth are still going to fall out.
Not so much on the gum.
Not so much.
You're in the throes of getting ready to launch your book, right?
I am August 14th. So
how exciting.
And terrifying all at the same time.
Tell me about that.
Well, exciting because it feels like this has been a long journey. Well worth it, but a long journey. And I guess I don't know what to expect when it's like August 14th, when it people are actually able to not only buy it, but to get it in their hands and read it. I don't know what I'm going to feel, excitement, nervousness, insecurity, confidence. I mean, it's sort of this, I go through this wave of emotion about what do I think? Because it's just uncharted territory for me. People say all the time, "Oh, you're nervous when you go on stage." Not so much. I'm nervous for different reasons than actually being on stage, but the book has me nervous.
And why does that? I mean, I know why it is for me. I'm happy to share, but I'm curious, why is that for you, particularly as somebody who, in the parlance of our times, is very out there? Your job, in a lot of ways, is to be out there. even before you were in this job. You're in the Gartner days. You were a high profile kind of person. So tell me why this is so different than some of the other high profile things you've done so many times before.
So when I'm on stage and people will say, oh, are you nervous getting on stage? Is that something you are uncomfortable with? I say, my nerves are not about the act of actually standing on stage in front of people. Like, that doesn't make me nervous. But I am keenly aware of not wanting to suck. So, a very good friend of mine by the name of Guy Kawasaki, who is also, very well known, has written many, many, many bestsellers, and he's been doing this a long time, first chief evangelist at Apple with Steve Jobs a gazillion years ago. And we're actually from the same hometown rival high school. So we kind of rival each other anyway. But one time we were speaking at an event together in San Diego, and he had a migraine. And so we had to flip times. So he was morning and I was like right before lunch. And so I had to go morning and he picked up my slot so that he could try to like get his, headache together, right? The migraine together. So I stood in for him. And then like 3 weeks later, we just randomly so happened to be back together again at another event. And this time he was up in front of me and I was behind him. And so, he's up on stage and he goes, look, I give presentations all the time. And he was talking about enchantment and, how big a font size and how many slides you use and what kind of images. And he was talking through this whole thing about engaging the audience. And he just goes, the real key is don't suck. So, I'm standing off stage and I go, note to self, right? And then he's getting off stage and I'm getting on stage and he goes, hey, Bova, don't suck, as I'm getting on. So now every time I get on stage, I hear a guy in the back of my head go, hey, Bova, don't suck. And so when I'm on stage, I think it's more of making sure that the audience doesn't feel like it was a waste of their time. We can earn more money, but we can never earn more time. And so if it's a half hour, 45 minutes, or an hour of their time that they've chosen to sit there and listen to me, if they're at an event, they can pick to go walk through the trade show floor or take a call or, go get something to eat. They don't have to be sitting in that room. There's nobody, checking to make sure that they're there. So they've chosen to be there. So it's the pressure of making sure that they get some value out of my time with them. And I can't please everybody, but if there's just one thing they can all take. And so that instantaneous, when you're on stage, you can see, are people like whipping out their phone and their laptop? Are they reading the paper? Are they talking to the guy next to them? Or do they just flat out get up and leave?
Right. Right away.
Right away, right? The book is sort of like, you can't go, hey, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing with my book?
Hey, can I just stand behind you?
Can I just stand behind you and watch you go, that sucks, or they close it and put it down and never pick it up again. You don't know, right? Because they buy the book, it shows up, and then it kind of goes into this ether unless they choose to be vocal about it socially. You just don't get that kind of instantaneous visual feedback.
Yeah. No, I know exactly what you're talking about. And of course, I don't know how long you take to prep for a speech, but I would imagine, you speak on similar topics all the time, and I'm sure you do prep work, but it's probably not 6 months or a year or 2 years of prep work, right?
No.
And when you write a book, you spend all this time researching and writing and putting it together and then editing and all that stuff, right? So there's this elongated period where, much like a startup, you're sort of hunkered down in semi-stealth mode, and you're creating this thing, and then you launch it on the world, and you just go, wow, to your point, I hope they don't think it sucks.
Right.
My mom thinks it's awesome.
Yeah. Woohoo. Thanks, Mom. My mom will say, I think it's awesome. I don't understand any of it, but I think it's awesome. You're like, thanks, Mom. I'd say from a preparation standpoint, I think that, like with speaking, at the beginning of my speaking career, it was not great. And not that it's perfect every time.
So you were, quote unquote, a natural?
I'm a natural gift of gab, but that doesn't mean you're a natural gift of gab on a stage, really feeling comfortable and secure about the content you're delivering. Back to your point, like preparation. Now I feel like if somebody handed me a card and said, you need to talk about gardening for half an hour, I could probably wing it because I'm comfortable enough to just kind of figure out how to tell a story and arc through and kind of go back to what I want to talk about anyway, and then weave in the gardening story, if you will. but with and I'm always striving to be better. So every time I get on stage, I actually request from whomever it is, a copy of the video, and I'll watch how I answered, or, was I pacing too much, or did I say things that didn't make sense? Was I talking too fast? Or, I'm always trying to get better. With the book, I think as you go through writing it, at the end of the book is much better than the beginning, because you've kind of found your flow, right? And you've realized, oh, this is what I'm trying to say. And so then the danger is you go back.
Yes.
And you just try to touch everything, and it actually doesn't make it better. So thankfully, I had a strong team around me that kept me focused and said, you need to stop tinkering. You just need to.
It's hard to say you're done, right? It's hard to say, okay, I'm done writing this.
Yeah, I'm done. But everybody told me you will write the introduction last. And then I understood when I finished the book what they meant. Because then I'm like, okay, now I know what I want to say, versus trying to write the intro and then follow it up. That you actually I wrote the book and then I actually went back. Even though the intro was quote unquote done, I did go back and say, there are things I learned that I should have punched a little bit more through writing it.
Interesting. I'm trying to remember when we wrote the intros for Niche Down. I don't really remember. It might have been about halfway through. It definitely wasn't at the end. I don't think it was at the beginning. But I can remember us, Heather and I, talking, oh shit, we got to get to that. But to your point, I think you're absolutely right in that we knew what the book was. You sort of gotta know what the book is before you can really write the intro. Because when you begin, you think right? You have this painting in your head. You're like, okay, well, the blue's going to go here and the red's going to go there or whatever.
Right.
And I know this sounds like I've been living on the West Coast too long, but the book sort of reveals itself to you as you write it.
You have been right. You have been living on the West Coast too long. Did it come to you?
I was channeling it.
As you were hiking through the ruins, and
Jesus was talking to me.
Oh boy. And he was saying, you need to niche down.
Exactly.
Not kneel down, niche down.
Yeah, I think that was a translation problem in the Bible. If they'd got it, we wouldn't have had to write the book.
Maybe. But, I think that's, that was interesting, to just sort of go back. And I could not agree more. You are absolutely correct that it starts to reveal itself through the story that you're trying to tell. And I found that what I thought it was going to be was actually not what it ended up to be. It ended up being much better than I had anticipated. Like the way it came together, actually, I tried to craft the story actually like a keynote. Like if I were to tell the story on stage in an hour, how would I tell the story on stage? And so I actually built the keynote, if you will, and then blew it out as a book, right? Because that's the way I think. I think, how would I tell this story if I had 45 minutes to tell it? And then obviously you got to say, how do I take 45 minutes and translate it into 70,000 words, which that's a lot.
Yeah.
So it took me a lot longer to write it than a 45-minute speech, but it was a cathartic process. It was cathartic. And the exclamation point was last week. I actually recorded the book. So I did the audio for it. And yeah, I was pretty sick of hearing my voice after sort of 4 days, 8 hours a day. And then
it's no joke reading a book, isn't it?
Oh, then my third day, all of a sudden, I couldn't say there was 10 words. Like United States was not happening. Couldn't say it. So then I literally said to my producer, can I just say US? Can we just, because they're not looking at the book. So they don't know I actually spelled out United States. Can I just say, states?
Well, it's
states.
Interesting. Our book coach told me not to do that, that you had to read the exact book. And in particular, don't be going way off script oh, isn't that line great? Heather wrote that line. Isn't she fucking smart? And because I would have naturally said a whole bunch of shit that's not in the book. But she was strict on me. Just read the book.
Oh, yeah. My producer said, no, you cannot say U.S. She made me say it. But just like I was just saying, United States.
United States.
United States. So then it was do it, do all the exercises to try to loosen it up.
Yeah.
and try to get it done. And the gentleman next to me in the recording studio next to me, when we were in the break room, he comes walking in, and in my head I go, this man has found his calling. Like, his voice is so perfect for reading an Audible book. Like, that's what I'm thinking as I'm at the, water.
What was his name by chance?
Well, so he did the audiobook for the Da Vinci Code. And so that's
oh, wow.
Yeah. And so, I'm in the portfolio studio. It's got Grammys, and, everyone's recorded there because I'm in Los Angeles. So it has that density of talent and sort of the entertainment industry. And so here I am sitting at this table, and people are having a conversation, and all I wanted to do was close my eyes and listen, because their voices were so perfect, right? Yeah. And here I am going, I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I'm reading a book. They're like, who are you? Why are they having you read your own book? But it was at least I got to read the book again, like from cover to cover without editing it, right? Because that's the problem. Like, you really had to just read it and let it sit, because there was no more, like, this is the book. We caught a few little typos, but outside of that, I was pretty happy with it.
Yeah. So I'm curious, nobody writes a book like your book unless they are meaningfully compelled, drawn, like in a book, and you tell me, but a book like this is not, you just don't say, I want to write it. Like, you have to be driven to write it. And so I'm curious, Tiffany, like what drove you to write this book?
I would say that since early in my career, I've always been a student of my profession. And my profession has sort of been sales, marketing, customer service, and kind of growth, in that kind of vein, if you will. And so I always would read, not for pleasure. Like, I wouldn't read a fiction book. It's just not where I would spend my time, because I read so much for work. So I always consume, articles and business publications or books, whatever. And then in my last stint at Gartner, I spent quite a bit of time writing, because that's kind of the nature of the beast. And I'd never been a writer before. So I really had to figure out, what does that even mean? How do I get my speaking voice onto paper? How do I tell a story that is a little bit more academic than story, if you will? And how do I balance those two things? And so over that decade, it really taught me how to convey a point of view on paper, which I'm not saying I totally fell in love with, but I understood the power behind it when people would say, I read that, and it really helped me with these three things. And then I went, oh, okay. So that medium for me started to work in my mind. And then it's just funny, reading.
Sorry to interrupt you, but
yeah.
Do you have the same thing that I had? Are you a speaker because you learn more by consuming information that way, by listening than reading?
Yeah, I'm a listen visual learner, not a read learner.
Yes, as am I.
Yeah, which is why I don't have my MBA.
Well, there's a million reasons why I don't have my MBA.
Yeah, that's mine. That would be my one, because I wouldn't pass.
I got a long list. But the interesting thing for me is, for the better part of 30 years, there were a set of ideas that I tried to communicate. And I would say those ideas, particularly around what today we call category design, I was probably batting at best 200 in terms of really getting them to stick. And I could never understand, even with speeches or workshops or whatever it was, that, my batting average was just way lower than I thought it should be. And ever since Play Bigger came out, it's been 2 years now, my batting average has gone up to kind of 100%, because I can say, well, here's the book, and this lays out the ideas and sort of at a high level how you go about it. And if you want to do that stuff, then now we can have a meaningful conversation, because we literally are both operating from the same, if you will, playbook. And the big aha in all of that for me, Tiffany, is, wow, if I had known this a lot longer ago, I would have written the book a lot longer ago. And it was a real eye-opener for me as to what works with different people. And for, at least in my personal experience, writing it down works better for a lot of business people than talking it through.
I would totally agree. And I think you nailed it. It was a foundational, they read it, it was foundational. And now we could double or triple click into that concept where I didn't have to spend time sort of laying the foundation. And I feel that way about this book. I felt like, okay, first of all, I wanted to write a book that I would want to read. So it was a balance between it not being too academic, because that's just not my personality or brand, and then having it not be too light where it didn't have enough hard-hitting kind of insights that someone would want to actually consume the content. So I tried to balance the two. So I used sketch notes instead of using, like a PowerPoint slide or an Excel sort of image in the book. I used sketch notes to sort of visually tell the story, going back to how do I learn.
And to make it feel maybe a little more friendly than a slide.
See a little more friendly, right? You can read these 3 pages, or you could look very quickly at the sketch note and you can kind of get the same story. And so you don't need to read line by line. The second thing I did was when I read, I actually write notes down the side of it and I underline, which is, so I actually like the hard books because I'll ask myself questions.
Too? I have to read with a pen and a highlighter.
Yeah, I'm the same way. And so what I did in the book was I underlined what I would have underlined had I read the page.
Oh, that's cool. So you just did it for them, so to speak.
I did it for them so that if they were looking through the page, and if you're reading quickly, you're not reading every single word, like a bated breath to hear whether she's going to say the word the or which, that you're reading fairly quickly, that you could pop through a page and go, these 3 are the bullets or highlights. Some pages had none, but some pages had 1 or 2 or 3. Then they could catch what I wanted them to really get out of that point in that particular page, right? Or that particular chapter.
Make it super consumable.
Super consumable. And then the book was broken up into, there's 10 growth paths. And within each growth path, there's 3 stories. And each story is like 4 or 5 pages. 2 positive stories of companies who have used that particular growth path in order to achieve growth. And then 1 that is a less than optimal result when someone has chosen that particular path. So 2 positive, 1 negative. So very quickly, they can consume a story and get the idea and go, oh, now I get it. I see it in practice. And so there's 30 stories in the book. So once again, right, I tell stories on stage. So how do I create that same feeling in a book where it's not, 275 pages of this dense content that I forgot what I read 40 pages ago and I'm supposed to remember it because now I'm applying it in this chapter and I'm totally confused. Yeah.
So maybe tell me one of your favorite stories from the book.
Oh, that's tough. I would say that what was super inspiring for me was the amount of companies I had to choose from.
And because were all of them Salesforce companies, or did you wander outside the Salesforce universe, or how did you think about that part?
Yeah, I actually did not compare and contrast on purpose. I didn't want to say, well, I'm going to choose this. Are they a customer? Are they not a customer? It was on the merits of what did that company do? And it's not a book about using, technology per se. So some of them are and some of them aren't. Some of them are and I didn't know that they were. Some of them aren't and I hope they will be soon. But ultimately, that wasn't
somebody's going to call them at home.
Yeah, maybe, but that wasn't a hurdle for me. But I tried to get some diversity in industry. So there's technology companies and CPG companies and female-owned businesses and publicly traded businesses and startups. And, I tried to get a good swath of companies so that people could relate to them regardless of where they were in the world, that they could see themselves in that situation. Even if it was Walmart, or Amazon, you go, well, I don't want to read about those two. I'm a small $2-3 million turnover business. That's not relevant to me. But that one example has nothing to do with their size and scale. It has to do with what they did in a certain situation and could they apply it. So I tried to make it super actionable, regardless of size, region, industry, which is hard because you don't want to be everything to everybody and kind of something to no one, right? So I had to make it
down.
You got to niche down, not to be confused with kneel down, niche down. Yes.
And so what are some of the big ahas in the book?
So there's 3 really. I often get asked, I'm trying to grow my business. I'm looking for that one thing that's going to help me turn the corner? And I say, well, the one thing is there's never one thing. That's kind of the opening sentence. So, as clients have come to me over the years, and me myself as an executive, saying, we just need to fix this one thing, and I know it's going to make a difference. Now that I look back, I realize that was probably way too narrow. So the first thing is it's never just one thing. But the next was I said I need it to be something digestible, and people go, God, there's 1,000 ways to grow the business. And I sort of said, no, there's actually only 10. And I tried to make it a manageable number where people could go, okay, I can handle 10. I can't handle, there's a few books that'll go, here's your 280 leadership tips. It's like, oh my God, like,
yeah,
really? Like, okay. So, you need to sort of make it digestible, and 10 felt right. But the next thing was, it isn't actually what companies choose to do to grow. The aha was it's the combination in which they do it with other things. And the second thing behind that was the sequence or order in which they do it. So that was the aha.
Is the combination of ththings they do to grow,
and the timing, the sequence,
and when they do what. So
yeah,
open that up, unpack that a little bit.
So I use McDonald's because it's translatable sort of globally. Is McDonald's in the U.S. had found themselves in a growth stall, and made a decision to bring back all-day breakfast, or to introduce all-day breakfast. They'd never had it. It sort of stopped at 10 in the morning, and you couldn't get breakfast any other time, which means, that statement is everyone in the world works from 8 to 5, which we know that that's not the case. Some people get off work at 7 a.m. or 7 p.m., and maybe they want breakfast.
And sometimes at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, for reasons I can't explain.
You just want an Egg McMuffin.
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah. Chase it with a milkshake or something. I don't know. Who wants hash browns? I want French fries. Oh, well, yeah, it is you. So that hasn't happened yet, but we'll go back to the all-day breakfast, right?
Yeah, all-day breakfast.
All-day breakfast. And so what had happened over time was they were trying to grow the business, and they had inflated their menu to such a level that the line inside of McDonald's and the drive-through line had gotten so long that customer experience had declined. So now you have people waiting, and it doesn't feel like fast food. It feels like, do I have enough time to go to McDonald's, which was not ever the goal, right? So before they would launch an all-day breakfast, they needed to reduce the menu. So they had to do the reduce the menu before they launched all-day breakfast. The next thing they had to do is, the grill in the kitchen could not cook burgers and eggs at the same time because the heat is different and it's a limited size grill. So we actually have to rearrange the kitchen, which means we need to go to, in the United States, some 3,000 franchisees and get everybody to go, I'm in. We're going to reorganize the kitchen, reduce the menu, change the ordering process, right? And completely rethink what they're going to do if they're going to serve breakfast all day. So the sequence and combination had to happen. Otherwise, the right idea was all-day breakfast because it really gave them a bump that they were looking for. But had they done it without reducing the menu and fixing the grill problem, it would have been the right idea, and it would have failed under the weight of its own operational limitations. So that's what I mean by combo sequence. So sometimes it is the right idea, and people pull the plug too quickly because it's not giving them the results they want, but they may not actually realize it. If they just removed some things or added one other thing, that it actually could accelerate. So that was the big aha. And so when I first tested that concept with people, they went like, yeah, you're onto something, right? That has not been presented in that way.
I'm curious, how often did you see, is this any kind of a pattern where, like in the McDonald's story, there's a set of things you have to give up or stop doing in order to be able to do this thing that you think is going to drive growth? And how hard is it for companies to say, okay, well, we're actually going to reduce the size of the menu in this example?
Yeah, I'd tell you the thing that was the constant is internal inertia. One, we've tried it before, it didn't work, so we're not going to try it again. Yeah, but the market's nothing like it was. Next might be that they don't actually know how to work their way through it, so they don't try. Or they try to do too much. They don't get down to the, what are the things that are really going to have impact. And that's fairly consistent. But the one thing that I'd say on both cases, the positive case studies as well as the others, is sometimes people get too far away from whatever their core is. What is the purpose of their company? What are they known for and what do they do? And so if you think about McDonald's, it's like, it's fast food, it's quality, it's at the right price. And they got too far away where they're like, okay, we're going to have a healthy menu and we're going to have a kids menu and we're going to have a, dessert and we're going to have all these things. And said, it's like, let's just get back to the core of who we are and what we are and compete there. And then what are the things we can do to amplify that and go find customers who maybe never come to McDonald's because we didn't have breakfast at 1 PM or, 10 o'clock at night, whatever it might be. So I think it's two things.
Is something that makes one of my favorite burger joints, In-N-Out, so awesome, right? In-N-Out Burger, they have burgers, fries, shakes, and soft drinks. That's it. There's no veggie burger. There's no whatever. There's no nothing. It's just burgers and fries and shakes.
Yeah. So the first time I went to In-N-Out, because I live in Los Angeles, right? So the first time I went to In-N-Out, I was like, I got to In-N-Out. First of all, I'm a vegetarian. So I go, well, hopefully there's something I can eat there. So you just said it, right? There's no sort of veggie burger, right? So there was a veggie burger on the menu and I go, oh, this is great. There's a veggie burger. So, we order it, we drive through, they have their big, massive burgers. And I have my little veggie burger and it's 2 buns, lettuce, and tomato.
Yeah, there's no burger in the veggie burger.
But I was like, awesome. Well, there you go.
Yeah,
it's,
and tomatoes and onions.
It was great. But to your point, so I have Shake Shack in my book, which is definitely somebody who has picked up the concept of fast casual in really trying to marry a high-end restaurant in quality of ingredients and the service and all of those things with something that feels a lot more like fast food and blending those two together. But at the end of the day, Danny Meyer, the founder, going back to what I just said, like what are they known for and what is their sort of, purpose? It's about delivering, this amazing experience. And making sure that their employees are really happy, because if their employees are really happy, then the customers will be really happy. And the rest of it is just kind of the product that they sell. But the heartbeat of Shake Shack is really playing against the experience.
And so if I'm the CEO of a company and I say to you, hey, Tiffany, we're thinking about our growth strategy. We want to do something that really could take us to a whole other level. What are the first couple things you'd ask me to think about?
Great question, because this was the foundation of the book. So, I can tell you that on a daily basis, I probably get asked that a half a dozen times, right? Everyone's sort of like, I'm looking for that one thing. And I have even had comments about the book of saying, why didn't you just tell people what the growth path was they should take? And I said, it's impossible for me to do that for one reason in my mind and one reason only. And that is the context of your market is unique for you. Meaning, who are your customers? Why do they buy from you? Who are you selling to? How are you selling? Who are you competing against? What markets are you in? What segments, verticals? Like, you kind of have to answer all that. And then it sets the context. What I mean by that is, so let me pick, Netflix is also in the book. Let me pick Netflix and say, let's say they launched their streaming service in 1995. How well would that have gone over? Like 0.001% of the households had.
I mean, back when we were on dial-up and it still sucked.
Right. But some of us were on dial-up. Right. So it's not only no high speed, it's not everyone was on dial-up. And so it would have been the right idea at the wrong time. The context wasn't right. Netflix had to wait for the price of, and I'm making a huge assumption here, right? But they had to wait for the price of DVD players to drop so everyone could have them. And then secondarily, if you're going to move into streaming, it had to become that streaming was ubiquitous and everyone was getting high-speed internet to their homes. And then next, and it was at a reasonable price. So that it wasn't just reserved for, the high end of the market that could afford, a couple $100 from an internet access.
Yeah.
And not everybody had, by the way.
Conditions have to be right. Particularly, and look, I'm sure it's true in other industries, but in our industry, it's like super true, right? Because you can't do a cloud storage business if nobody's on the cloud yet.
That's right. So in my role before I worked at Gartner, I ran sales and marketing for a division of Gateway Computers. Used to have the Holstein patterns on the boxes, otherwise known as cow
sure
pattern.
Had its time in the sun, didn't it?
We did. And so, just pick that. When that was going on, not everybody had a PC at home. Right. So, but we were doing at the time, we were doing tablets. We were doing flat panel TVs.
Yeah. We
were one of the first to sell multiple monitors, thinking people would want more than one monitor associated with a CPU.
Right.
This is in, sort of kind of middle to late 90s when the stores were open. And people all the time will say, oh my God, isn't it great that Apple has their own stores? And I go, hey, like Gateway had stores first. Like it was very experiential.
Well,
we had a Genius bar. It wasn't called
exactly like the Apple stores, only there's nobody in the Microsoft stores.
But we were doing it before anybody else. We were doing tablets before it. We were actually partnering with Microsoft and Intel and pushing out tablets at the time. We were doing flat panel TVs, but the context of the market wasn't right. What people weren't yet ready to have a PC at home. They left their PCs at work and came home. And so
let me push on that one just a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think there are some, let me just put them in air quotes, realities that you can't be ignorant of, for sure. The Netflix trying to do streaming in 1994 is a great example. However, there's that famous Victor Hugo quote, all the armies of the world can't stop an idea whose time has come. And so a lot of, I think a big mistake that people make, let me say it that way, is, well, the market's not ready. Okay, well, what if you were the person who got the market ready? Or if you go back to the Victor Hugo quote, how do you make it go make it your time? And, in a lot of ways, that's what category design is about, because if you're able to effectively frame and evangelize a problem in a way that the world that you care about relates to, and enough people in that world begin to see the problem that you do, then it tips. That's exactly what Benioff did in the creation of the cloud, right? In the beginning, it's in complete insanity. I'm not going to have this in my office. I'm going to rent it, not buy it. You're going to have my customer and salesperson data. Go F yourself. Like, this sounds absolutely crazy because it's a complete 180 from where the market is. But over time, as I would call him not just an entrepreneur, but a category designer, he teaches or conditions the world to think about this the way he does. And over time, of course, it tips. So I guess with all that said, Tiffany, my question for you is, how do I sort of get my head straight? Is it truly environmental? That is to say, no streaming in 1994, too early for Netflix. Or is this a market condition, if I call it that with the right amount of category design and evangelism and promotion of this new way of thinking, I could actually teach the world to embrace a new technology because I've taught them how to think differently?
So I'd answer that two ways. One side of the coin, I'm going to start on the opposite of sort of the cloud Benioff example. The one side of the coin is I'm already familiar with the service, but now you're just giving me, so I'm already familiar with catching a taxi. I've already said that I will get in the back of a car of somebody I don't know. It just happens to be yellow or blue or green or black, wherever you are in the world. And I understand getting in a taxi. So Uber coming and going, we're going to be an alternative to something you're already familiar with. But what we're going to do is we're going to provide you that same job, and we're just going to do it more efficiently with a better experience. I'm oversimplifying here. People go, oh, I get that. And now, and it's on an app. And I don't have to carry currency. And I can hail and, rate drivers. And I can, have it connect directly to my expense report. And I can send someone a trip so they know where I am. Oh, I'm in.
And I think a lot of it too is the ability to see where the driver is on her way to come get you.
Yes, but
all of it
yes,
changes the whole game, right?
Changes the whole game, but everyone is familiar with catching a taxi.
Yes, it's an existing problem that we understand that pre-Uber and Lyft we thought had been solved in the most effective way, and then they obviously taught us differently.
Versus saying, I've never had a smartphone in my hand. Like, there's no comparable, right? I am a category creator, right?
Yes.
In the sort of Apple example. Or I'm Benioff and I'm a category creator. The amount of time it takes them, although very quick, is you gotta hang on until the market kind of catches up with you, because, if I'm going to make, if I were, Ford, if I'm going to make faster horses and not a car, like if I only listen to the market, none of these big category creations would ever happen. Right. So you have to have those that are out there making category. And that's the other side of the coin, right? I'm going to see a job, and how do I make it better is you have to wait for the, like Blockbuster already showed that people will drive somewhere and get it. I'll make it easier. I'll mail them DVDs, and then I'll make it easier again, and I'll stream it. But everyone has already understood that they're willing to not go to movie theaters and watch a movie at home.
Yes.
When they want to and how they want to.
When was the last time you went to a theater?
Oh, I still go here because, like the big movies, like I like to see in an IMAX theater, and, I like to sort of absorb them that way. If I'm going to drop 10 or 12 bucks, I really want to like experience it. But I get the opportunity flying everywhere, right? I get to catch a lot of movies on this little screen,
Right.
So, but I probably go a half a dozen or a dozen times a year, something like that.
Oh, wow. Because I hardly ever go to a theater anymore. And actually, most of it has to do with the behavior of the audience. Everybody fucking talks. Everybody on their fucking phone. Like the audience wrecks it for me. It's like, fuck it. I'll wait till this movie comes out, and I'll sit in my living room and watch this with my wife, and and she'll make a wonderful meal. She's an incredible cook, and like, I don't have to deal with idiots on their phones and during the fun scenes in the movie.
Well, and especially now, like, let's go back to what we just said. Now you can have, THX quality sound in your home and a 50-inch flat screen on your wall, and have a really amazing experience. It's not inexpensive, right? But it's getting less expensive over time. And so once again, now you have an alternative.
Yeah.
So going back to what we were saying, right? As that technology has improved, maybe people have actually stopped going to the theater because of that, where there wasn't really an option. You didn't want to watch this big kind of blockbuster, high action packed movie on a small TV. But now you have, the sound system, you can listen to it at your pool. You can listen to it in every room. You can listen to it. It's just so much more immersive in your home, like you would in a theater. And you can even have a home theater. It's really stretching it. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I think that those are two sides to that question. You have category makers, and then you have people who are able to take the changes in the market context, like, oh, now everyone has a smartphone, or everyone has a flat panel TV, or everyone has bandwidth to their home, or everyone has, whatever it might be. And so I'm now going to make it a better experience. I'm going to make it faster. I might even make it more expensive, because I always say with Uber, it's like I have stood on the corner when it's freezing cold with my phone in my hand, paying surge pricing as a taxi drives by, and I will wait.
Yeah.
I will wait. So there's a reason.
Uber is less likely to smell bad.
It's everything I said. It attaches to my expense report. I can see where they are. Someone knows where I'm going.
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about currency. There's all kinds of reasons why I do it, but that goes back. So I think there's two answers to that question, but still coming back to the market context is where I start. If a business owner like you or something asked me the question, what should I do? I'd say,
context? What's going on?
What's your context? Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Now, I know I don't have you for very much longer. Last time we were together in Vancouver at Traction Force, I seem to remember that you had some pretty interesting things to say about women in tech. Is there anything you want to touch on in that regard, Tiffany?
I think the question was, is there sort of people that have paved the way for me in a career perspective? And I absolutely believe on so many levels. I sort of stand on the shoulder of giants that have come before me that, many I've had the pleasure and opportunity and privilege to be on stage with and meet along the way. That was really instrumental in decisions I've made in my career. But it's been a mix of men and women for me. It's not just women, and it's not just men. And it's most definitely not just in tech. It's been sort of across the gamut. But it's what's always fascinating to me is because I speak at so many tech conferences somewhere in the world, sometimes I'm the only woman on stage, unless it's an executive from the company. And for sure, when I look out in the audience, especially when you get outside the U.S., it's less women. but it's more than it was. So the good news is that I think the awareness that we're putting out in the market about just diversity in general, because I don't think this is a men and women. I think diversity is much broader than gender, that ultimately it just makes teams more effective, companies more effective. You should absolutely represent in your own company the customers you sell to. If you sell to millennials and there's nobody on...
That's where you should look. You should.
Yeah, I mean, if you sell to millennials and your entire product design team is over the age of 50, I don't know, call me crazy. You're probably going to have a little bit of a disconnect. Like, they would never do that, right? Or even on your board.
People who are 50.
Listen, I'm 52. So I'm throwing it right at myself. The point is, if someone asked me to design for a millennial, the first thing I'd say is, let's get some millennials in the room. And let's talk about it, right? Because I can never assume to understand. I can bring them a little more experience into the conversation, but ultimately, I'm going to lean on them to say what they think may or may not work. They may not be right, but I think that they're going to pull us closer to what should be done versus what we think sitting in a generation that is not them.
Yeah.
So if you sell across, right now, there's 5 generations that are in the workforce. This is the first time ever. And so if you're selling across all generations, then that's what your employee base should look for, like your executive team, your board. And if it's regionally, then you should have people in the company who regionally represent. I just think that diversity and inclusion is much broader than gender.
Yep, I couldn't agree more. Anything else before we wrap, Tiffany?
No, I just want to say it's a pleasure to be with you again. As you mentioned, we were together in Vancouver and we were drinking at like noon. And so, I'm glad that we've had this opportunity to reconnect, but I'm a little disappointed I didn't get a bottle of bourbon before this call. I
should have FedExed you some bourbon.
I was waiting. We were going to toast in the whole 9 yards and then nothing came. Oh, what happened?
I am a very, my wife would tell you, I'm not thoughtful, I'm not romantic, and that's a very good idea. And the thoughtful person I wish I was wishes I had done that.
Well, so I'll give you my address and you can give it to me after. And we'll just do it again at some point in time, and this time we'll get it right.
That would be great. The next time you and I are, maybe it should be every time you and I talk, we should be drinking.
Okay, well, it was National Tequila Day yesterday, so I'm voting for tequila next time.
Excellent. I'm a huge tequila fan. All right, Tiffany, thank you so much, and congratulations on the book launch.
Thank you so much.
Whew. All right. Well, if you enjoyed this conversation with Tiffany as much as I did, why not share this conversation right now on social media, or email it directly from your smartphone to somebody who you think might enjoy it. The other thing I'd tell you about Tiffany's book, Growth IQ, is it's written in a very cool way. She's got a lot of diagrams in here. She's got things underscored, and she's made it really easy to consume this book. So not only do I like the content of Growth IQ, I also like the style in which Tiffany has written it. Now, speaking about something else I like, growwire.com. This is the new place for entrepreneurs who care about, you guessed it, growth, personal growth, professional growth, and business growth. Myself and Heather Clancy, co-author of Niche Down, have been part of the GrowWire contributing team since the beginning, and we blog pretty regularly there, so you'll find articles by us. Also, if you go to growwire.com, you'll be able to check out the GrowWire podcast hosted by my buddy Jason Maynard, and I was deeply honored and stoked to be guest number 1 on the GrowWire podcast, so check that out. And an episode I really love as well is episode number 7, featuring the incredible Kevin Maney, who, as you probably know, is the co-author of Play Bigger, the co-author of the new Unscaled, which I talk about all the time. I think it's a genius new book, and he's got an incredible career as a journalist, as well as now being a category designer at Category Design Advisors. So check out growwire.com. Check out the GrowWire podcast. It's what smart entrepreneurs are up to. All right, and if you want to communicate with us, you can email us always, blackhole@legendsandlosers.com. I am at LOC LOCHHEAD on Twitter. And, of course, you can always check us out at legendsandlosers.com. All right. We would like to thank the new book from today's guest, Tiffany Bova, Growth IQ, available wherever you get good, smart growth books. Speaking of books we love, Niche Down, How to Become Legendary by Being Different, the #1 Amazon bestseller, written by Heather Clancy and myself. Check out nichedownbook.com. Verve Coffee, the official coffee of Legends and Losers. They are the leader in West Coast craft coffee, Santa Cruz, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Tokyo, and they are always at vervecoffee.com. Our good friends at onelifefullylive.org. This is the nonprofit helping you dream, plan, and live your best life. Check them out today. A new audio experience by Nick Cullen and myself. It's the spin-off of Legends and Losers. If you love Legends and Losers, you might love a snippet of it set to music. Check out 6 minutes of Legendary on Apple Podcasts. And also, if you want to growth hack your business to new heights, check out secondflightconsultancy.com. This is Nick Cullen's business. Speaking of businesses that I love by friends that I love, check out atre.net. atre.net. B2B corporate websites that are better than your best spokesperson at selling your company. Check out atre.net today. Are you ready for an assistant? Is it time? Do you need some help getting stuff done? Check out Bottleneck Virtual Assistants at bottleneck.online. And kiva.org, microloans that make a difference. This is a nonprofit helping small entrepreneurs around the world. Check out kiva.org. All right, we must remind you that this oddcast is the sole property of the Legends and Losers Oddcast Network, and we would love you just a little bit extra if you shared the shit out of it right now. All rights do remain disturbed. We must warn you, this oddcast, whatever you want to call it, is clearly produced in a studio that does contain nuts. Teach growth IQ. Support your local entrepreneurs. Don't forget to listen to Joan Jett. Thank you, Dandy Candy. I love you, Mom and Dad. Hey, Colin, this oddcast really ties the room together, doesn't it? Today, our deepest apologies go out to Marcus Rust, Chief Executive Officer of Rose Acre Farms. Sorry, Marky, we just ran out of time for you. That's it. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you again soon on another episode of Legends and Losers.